The way I approach issues around sex, time, and money generally has to do with looking at our expectations and our values, or at the communication between us. Not every issue is going to boil down to something that could be fixed with focus on either of those two areas, but almost all of them can be. And again, I'm assuming in the relationships that there's a degree of stability and transparency and evenness in the relationship, because there can be transgressions around in any of those three areas that fall outside of the bounds of the type of relationships that we've been speaking about. And those, of course, need to be addressed differently. But often we need to become clear what our expectations are of each other, what our values, what our priority of values are. And what that means is if you look at the sexual arena, you want to look at, how big of a priority is the sexual dimension of life? Where does it fall? How much time do you want to devote to it? How comfortable are you with it? How much does it mean to you? Do you both feel the same way about it? And if there are differences, what are those differences in values and expectations? In my experience, though, more often than not, the issue is less expectations and values as much as communication and transparency. Simple communication, straightforward communication, ability to take risks, to explore things that may seem less comfortable to speak about. So you can see that the question wouldn't be resolved by looking at the arena of sexuality itself. It would be resolved more by getting clear how important it is. What are the values around it? And is there a different type of communication that needs to happen? Are there questions? The same with money. Money is a big one where we could have different priorities. Use of money. A lot of challenges in relationship usually fall when one person is earning more than the other. And that can create different dynamics that really have nothing to do with money themselves, but they push different triggers and buttons in culture. So you could have one partner, one spouse who's earning more, who's very generous. Maybe that spouse is very generous and also likes to do a lot of things. And that spouse doesn't mind earning the money for the other spouse. But being generous is not always the answer, because that can trigger all kinds of other dynamics. It can trigger a sense of inadequacy or a sense of dependence or a sense of classic gender roles. So sometimes generosity in certain situations sets off responses that are going to create friction in relationship. There's nothing wrong with the generosity. It just might not be the most skillful response at a particular point in time. So that's why I was saying that when we want to really work the art of relationship, it is working the art of understanding not just ourselves, but certain cultural expectations, certain programming that's in us. And those triggers can get set off not because of some personal response to our partners, but simply because there are tapes and programs that exist in culture and that we're set off by. So that's a rich field for exploration, because we can explore those areas together without them becoming contentious between us. And the more we're able to work those areas together and understand them and look at these types of triggers, the more intimacy gets created, because we're working together on something that's fascinating. We're working together on the stuff of cultural responses that make us up as people. We're not trying to sort out issues of money between us. we're understanding how we operate, why we operate that way, and how there's a chain of dynamics that doesn't pit us against each other, because we're not trying to work out just the optimal way to be. We're deepening our understanding and depersonalizing our understanding. And all of this creates a porousness in the field of consciousness between us. It creates a lightness of being between us, and it creates just a sense of fluidity, a sense that nothing's a problem, a sense that differences around these issues don't need to matter that much, and a sense that our own fears or concerns don't need to be avoided, but they don't need to be made solid. A lot of fears and concerns arise around time. We don't spend enough time together. We're spending too much time together. We're too attached to each other. We're not close enough. The time we spend together is too superficial. The time we spend together is too intense. I want to spend more time and my partner doesn't. That means I'm needy and attached. I want to spend less time than my partner does. That means I'm distant and not supportive and caring. I mean, these are all, more generic and commonplace emotional reactions that can arise. But if you start looking at them as either expectations, so maybe one partner has expectations of spending more time together that's not reasonable given other demands on our time and our attention. The values. It could be a valuing of, at this moment in our lives, time we're putting into spiritual practice, cultivation of our skills in our profession, artistic pursuits. Just because it's a moment in our lives to put attention somewhere else doesn't mean that we're less committed. That may be the rhythm. So maybe we need to work it out. Maybe we're in different rhythms around that. But also our sense of the time, the amount of time we spend together, and the quality of the time can really be different. We can be two people in the same room, in the same house, with very different gauges of what's happening. And that's, again, where if we have this transparency of communication and porousness, we can start looking at that, not assuming that either one of us is more objective than the other, but simply interested in the different lenses. Those lenses are colored, they're tinted by our emotional needs, emotional states. They're tinted by our expectations, and they're tinted by fears. But all this can just be opened up. It can be worked through. It can be sorted out. It doesn't need to be a challenging issue. It doesn't need to mean anything about ourselves. So if we can hold all of our responses much more lightly in these three very charged areas, we'll start to experience less and less tension, just in existential tension in ourselves, because we'll start to feel more fluid. We'll be able to be in our home in a way that we just have a feeling of safety, stability, and fluidity. And so our time with our partners, if we want to talk about these things, we can. We may not. We may not need to. But we know that if we were confused about something, or if there were emotional reactions that arose, the quality of consciousness between us is so open and so fluid and so sensitive and so much focused on this cultivation of our skills in supporting human development in each other, that it'd be very easy. And that's where we really want to head to. We want to head to a type of simplicity around these charged areas of life. And also, if we start to feel a certain kind of anxiety, maybe it's around money. The economy's tough. All kinds of things are changing in that area. with the government shutdown right now, it's just tense around that area of life. It's not our tension, it's just tension in the consciousness around us. So maybe we just need to sit down for 45 minutes, an hour and a half, and just talk through what things look like. It can be so unbelievably simple if we don't assume that any particular emotional tension we feel means something big, fixed, dark, or complicated about us, or about our relationship, or about the other person, or about the future.